I'm Melanie, 32, and my garage art studio was my sanctuary, the place where I finally found my voice as a painter. After years of struggle, an international gallery had just noticed my work. My family never understood my passion, always seeing art as my cute hobby. When my sister Amanda's husband walked out, leaving her with twins, my parents had a solution that involved my sacred creative space. What they didn't know was that I'd already signed away my house and was weeks from boarding a plane to Barcelona. Before I tell you how it all exploded in our faces, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Growing up in our suburban Michigan home, the roles were clearly defined. Amanda was the golden child, beautiful, sociable, and following our parents' traditional expectations. I was the responsible one, the steady one, the one who was always told to be the bigger person whenever conflicts arose. My parents, Robert and Diana Reynolds, were good people in many ways, but they played favorites without even realizing it. From the moment I could hold a crayon, art was my escape. I would spend hours in my room sketching, painting, creating worlds that made sense to me when the real one didn't. My mother would smile indulgently at my creations, pinning them to the refrigerator while saying things like, "That's lovely, dear, but don't forget your math homework." My father was more direct. "Art is a fine hobby, Melanie, but you need something practical to fall back on." I took their advice, majoring in graphic design in college, a compromise that at least touched the fringes of my passion. For years after graduation, I worked at a marketing firm designing logos and websites by day, but at night and on weekends, my true work happened. I painted until my fingers cramped, developing my unique style that blended abstract expressionism with intimate portraits. I submitted to galleries, entered competitions, built an online portfolio, all while working a job that drained my creative energy. 3 years ago, after saving every penny I could, I managed to put a down payment on a modest 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, a fixer-upper with outdated wallpaper and carpets that had seen better days. But it had a detached garage with good light. The day I closed on the house, I didn't even unpack my bedroom first. Instead, I went straight to that garage and started planning my studio conversion. Over 6 months, I insulated the walls, installed proper lighting, built custom storage for my canvases and supplies, and painted the concrete floor a clean white. I added a small electric heater for Michigan winters and a portable air conditioner for the summers. That garage became my sanctuary, my true home within my home. Every penny I could spare went into creating the perfect environment for my art to flourish. Meanwhile, my sister Amanda's life followed a more conventional path. She met Kyle at a friend's wedding when she was 24. He was handsome, charming, and had a good job in pharmaceutical sales. Their courtship was a whirlwind, engaged after 4 months, married within a year. Our parents beamed with pride at the lavish wedding they largely funded. "This is what we've always wanted for our girls," my mother kept saying, though her eyes were only on Amanda. The twins, Emma and Jacob, came just 13 months after the wedding. Amanda threw herself into motherhood with the same enthusiasm she approached everything else in life. Her social media became an endless stream of perfectly staged family moments. Matching outfits, seasonal photo shoots, and milestone celebrations. Kyle was featured less and less in these carefully curated glimpses into their life, but none of us thought much about it at the time. Last month, the carefully constructed facade crumbled. I received a call from my mother, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Kyle left Amanda," she said without preamble. "He's been having an affair with his coworker for months. He moved out yesterday." Amanda is devastated. I felt genuine sympathy for my sister. Despite our different paths and the favoritism I'd experienced, I never wished her unhappiness. "That's terrible, Mom." "How are the twins taking it?" "They're too young to understand, thank goodness. They're just confused about why Daddy isn't home. But Amanda, she can barely get out of bed. Your father and I have been taking turns staying with her, helping with the children. The conversation shifted subtly then, in a way I wouldn't fully appreciate until later. It's such a big house for her to maintain alone, my mother sighed. And so many memories there with Kyle. She really needs a fresh start somewhere else, somewhere smaller. Maybe she could sell the house? I suggested. Use the equity to get an apartment? In this market? That could take months. She needs a solution now. My mother paused meaningfully. We're all going to need to pull together as a family during this crisis, Melanie. Everyone doing their part. I agreed, offering to help with the twins on weekends when I wasn't working on my art. There was a slight chill in my mother's response, but I dismissed it as stress from the situation. Over the next 2 weeks, the hints became less subtle. My father called to reminisce about how I always had such a big heart and how family comes first. That's what we taught you girls. My mother dropped by unannounced with coffee and casually mentioned how Amanda was struggling to afford daycare now that she was suddenly a single mother. Your sister has always been there for you, she said, though I struggled to recall specific examples. Now she needs her big sister to step up. I nodded, still not grasping what they were actually asking of me. That understanding would come soon enough, in a moment that would force me to make the hardest stand of my life. My artistic journey had been a marathon, not a sprint. For every painting that worked, there were 3 that ended up painted over or in the trash. For every positive comment online, there were silent rejections from galleries that didn't even warrant a form letter response. But I kept painting, kept evolving, kept believing that eventually my voice would find its audience. My style had developed into something uniquely mine. I painted women, ordinary women in extraordinary moments of personal transformation. A middle-aged woman staring at her reflection, half her face young and hopeful, the other half lined but wise. A young mother, exhausted but transcendent, with swirls of color emanating from her like an aura of power. A elderly woman dancing alone in her living room, her joy manifested as bursts of vibrant color against a muted background. These weren't technically perfect works. My formal training was limited to community college classes and online tutorials. But what my paintings lacked in academic precision, they made up for in emotional honesty. Each brushstroke was deliberate, each color choice meaningful. I painted what I felt, not just what I saw. 6 months ago, I posted a new series on my Instagram account, Women in Transition, I called it. 5 paintings of women at crossroads in their lives. I had worked on this series for nearly a year, pouring everything I had learned technically and emotionally into the canvases. The response was immediate and stronger than anything I had experienced before. My follower count tripled in a week. Among those new followers was Gabriel Ferrer, an art dealer with connections to galleries in Barcelona, Madrid, and Paris. His initial comment was simple: "These speak to me. Who represents you?" When I replied that I had no representation, he requested a video call. I spent the entire day before our appointment in a state of controlled panic, cleaning my studio, selecting which paintings to keep in view, rehearsing what to say. When his face appeared on my screen, I was struck by how young he looked, perhaps only a few years older than me, with thoughtful eyes and a quiet confidence. "Your work is fascinating, Melanie," he said after I had awkwardly given him a virtual tour of my studio. "There's something very authentic happening in your paintings. They're technically interesting, yes, but more importantly, they're emotionally compelling." He asked questions about my process, my influences, my vision. No one had ever engaged with my work at this level before. It was terrifying and exhilarating. "There's a residency program in Barcelona I think you would be perfect for," he said near the end of our call. 6 months of dedicated studio space, a stipend, and culminating in a featured exhibition. Would that interest you? Would it interest me? It was beyond anything I had dared to hope for. But the practical concerns immediately flooded in. "I'd have to leave my job," I said. "My house. My whole life here." Gabriel nodded understandingly. "It's a big decision. The program doesn't start for another 3 months. Think about it, Research it. I'll send you all the details. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my small house, imagining what it would be like to live in Barcelona, to be surrounded by art and artists, to have my work taken seriously. By morning, I knew I had to try. This was the opportunity one had been working toward my entire life. Over the next few weeks, I began quiet preparations. I renewed my passport, which had been in use since a brief trip to Canada years earlier. I downloaded language apps and began learning basic Spanish phrases during my lunch breaks. I researched the cost of living in Barcelona and calculated how much I would need to save. The biggest question was my house. I couldn't afford to pay a mortgage on a property I wasn't living in, but I also couldn't bear the thought of selling it and losing my studio. The solution came in the form of a lease. I could rent out my home for the duration of the residency, providing income while preserving my future return. Finding the right tenants became my mission. I wanted people who would respect my space, who wouldn't try to convert my studio back to a garage or make permanent changes to the house I had poured so much of myself into. After interviewing several potential renters, I found the perfect match: Stephen and Margaret Williams, a retired couple whose daughter lived in the neighborhood. They were quiet, financially stable, and best of all, Margaret was a hobby photographer who actually appreciated the studio space for her own use. We signed the lease agreement on a Tuesday afternoon. They would move in 3 weeks later, giving me time to pack my essentials and prepare the house. The rent they would pay would cover my mortgage, with enough left over to supplement the residency stipend. Everything was falling into place. That same evening, my mother called to invite me to dinner that Friday. "It's been too long since we all got together as a family," she said. "Your father is grilling steaks." I agreed without suspicion. After all, I was flying high on my secret plans, on the verge of a life-changing adventure. Little did I know that my family had plans of their own plans that would collide catastrophically with mine. Friday evening arrived, and I pulled into my parents' driveway feeling oddly nervous. I hadn't told them about the Barcelona opportunity yet, planning to wait until all the details were finalized. Part of me worried about their reaction. They had never fully supported my artistic pursuits, and the idea of me moving abroad would certainly be met with resistance. I noticed Amanda's SUV already parked in the driveway. The twins' car seats were visible through the window, colorful toys scattered on the seats. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for an evening of forced cheerfulness around my sister, whose emotional state was understandably fragile. My mother answered the door before I could knock, enveloping me in a perfumed hug. "There you are. We were just about to open the wine." She ushered me inside, where my father was stoking the grill on the patio and Amanda sat at the kitchen island, looking tired but composed. The twins, now 3 years old, were playing in the living room. Jacob spotted me first and ran over, wrapping his arms around my legs. "Auntie Mel, look at my new truck." I crouched down to admire the toy, feeling a genuine surge of affection for my nephew. Emma was more reserved, offering a shy wave from behind the coffee table. She had always been the quieter of the two, reminding me a bit of myself at that age. Dinner started pleasantly enough. My father grilled the steaks to perfection, and my mother had prepared all the sides I liked: roasted potatoes with rosemary, grilled asparagus, and her famous dinner rolls. The conversation remained superficial: the unseasonably warm weather, a new restaurant that had opened downtown, the twins' upcoming preschool evaluation. It wasn't until we were finishing our meal that I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. My father cleared his throat, setting down his wine glass with deliberate care. "Melanie, we wanted to have this dinner because there's something important we need to discuss as a family," he began, his tone serious. "As you know, Amanda and the kids are going through a very difficult time right now." I nodded, glancing at my sister, who was staring intently at her plate. "Kyle's support payments are going to be minimal, at least until the divorce is finalized," my father continued. "And Amanda needs to find a more affordable living situation. That house is too big, too expensive, and frankly, too full of painful memories." I understand, I said cautiously. Has she started looking at apartments? My mother reached over to pat Amanda's hand. That's what we wanted to talk to you about. We've come up with a solution that would help everyone. The unease I had been feeling crystallized into dread. We think Amanda and the twins should move into your house, my father stated, as if announcing a decision already made. You have that spare bedroom and the kids could share it. It would give her a chance to get back on her feet without the financial pressure of rent or a mortgage. I sat in stunned silence as my mother enthusiastically jumped in. And your garage would make the perfect playroom for the twins. All that space going to waste on canvases and paint supplies. Those could be stored in the basement or the attic. The garage already has that nice flooring you put in, and with some bright colors on the walls and proper toys, it would be wonderful for the children. They need room to play, especially during the winter months. Amanda finally spoke, her voice quiet, but with an undercurrent of entitlement that set my teeth on edge. It's not like you're using the garage for its actual purpose anyway. I looked from face to face, waiting for someone to acknowledge the absurdity of what they were proposing. My studio. My professional workspace, the heart of my creative practice, the place I had invested thousands of dollars and countless hours into perfecting, was being casually reassigned as a playroom. That's my art studio, I finally managed to say, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. It's not just a hobby space. It's where I work. My father waved his hand dismissively. You have that graphic design job for actual work. The painting is just something you do on the side. Actually, I began, but my mother interrupted. Melanie, your sister has 2 children to raise on her own now. Surely your paintings can wait while your family gets through this crisis. Amanda sniffled, right on cue. I don't know what I'm going to do otherwise. The twins need stability, and I can barely afford groceries right now. I felt trapped in a surreal scenario where my life's passion and hard work were being treated as trivial inconveniences. I understand this is difficult, I said carefully, but my studio is essential to my work. Maybe I could help Amanda find an affordable apartment instead? Or contribute something toward her rent elsewhere. My suggestions were immediately dismissed. Apartments in safe neighborhoods are too expensive, my mother countered. The twins need a yard to play in, my father added. I can't uproot the children to some cramped apartment when there's a perfectly good house in the family, Amanda said, tears welling in her eyes. They've already lost their father. Now they need to lose their home too? The emotional manipulation was so transparent it should have been laughable, but no one was laughing. My parents looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to cave as I always had before. I'm sorry, but I can't do this, I said firmly. My house isn't an option. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What do you mean it's not an option? My father demanded. We're not asking, Melanie. We're telling you what's going to happen. This is what families do. They help each other in times of need. By demanding I give up my professional workspace? By making plans to move into my house without even asking me first. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. That's not help, Dad. That's entitlement. Amanda burst into tears, and my mother rushed to comfort her. Now look what you've done, she hissed at me. Your sister is going through the worst time of her life, and you're being selfish about some hobby room. It's not a hobby room. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. It's my studio, and it's not available. I'm sorry for Amanda's situation. Truly I am, but moving into my house is not the solution. I left shortly after, ignoring my father's angry calls to come back and finish this discussion like an adult. In my car, hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, I realized this was just the beginning of the battle. My family had made their expectations clear, and they weren't going to accept my refusal easily. The following week was a barrage of emotional warfare. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my parents, each more manipulative than the last. From my father, your mother is heartbroken by your selfishness. Is this really the daughter we raised? From my mother, Amanda cried all night. The twins keep asking why Auntie Mel doesn't love them enough to help. I tried to respond rationally, offering alternatives that wouldn't require me to surrender my home and studio. I researched affordable housing options and sent Amanda links to apartments in her budget. I offered to help with childcare on weekends so she could pick up extra shifts at the department store where she worked. I even suggested she move in with our parents temporarily while sorting out her finances. All my suggestions were rejected outright. It was my house or nothing. 3 days after the disastrous dinner, I came home from work to find Amanda's SUV in my driveway. The twins were strapped in their car seats, watching a cartoon on a tablet. Amanda herself was standing on my porch, arms crossed, expression a mixture of entitlement and forced vulnerability. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not bothering to hide my annoyance as I unlocked my front door. "I thought if you could see how the space would work for us, you might understand," she said, following me inside without waiting for an invitation. "The kids are getting restless in the car. Can I bring them in?" I should have said no. Instead, exhausted from days of emotional pressure, I nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but make it quick. I have work to do." Amanda retrieved the twins, who immediately began running through my small living room, touching everything in sight. Jacob knocked over a stack of art books I'd been referencing for a new painting. Emma found my collection of brushes on the coffee table and began sorting them by size. "See how perfect this would be?" Amanda said, gesturing around my living room. "We'd hardly have to change anything. Just child-proof the cabinets, maybe rearrange the furniture a bit." I watched in silent disbelief as she walked through my house, making mental notes and comments about what would stay and what would go. "This bookshelf would need to be secured to the wall. That coffee table has too many sharp edges for the kids. We could put their toy chest right here." She spoke as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion. When she headed toward the back door that led to my studio, I finally snapped out of my stunned silence. "Stop. This studio is off limits." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Mel. I just want to see the space so I can plan how to set up the playroom." "It's not going to be a playroom," I said firmly, stepping between her and the door. "That's my workspace, and it's not available." "God, you're being so selfish," she exploded, her carefully cultivated victim persona cracking. "It's a garage, Melanie. A garage that you filled with your little art projects while I'm struggling to keep a roof over my children's heads." "Little art projects?" I repeated incredulously. "That garage represents years of work and thousands of dollars in equipment and supplies. It's my professional studio." Amanda scoffed. "Professional? Please. You work at Midwest Marketing designing brochures for dental offices. The painting is just a hobby you refuse to grow out of." Her dismissal of my art, my passion, my calling, the work I had sacrificed so much for cut deeper than she could know. But before I could respond, Jacob came running into the hallway where we stood, Emma close behind. "Mommy, can we see Annie Mel's paint room?" he asked excitedly. Amanda gave me a triumphant look. "See? They're already excited about their new playroom." That was the final straw. "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed anger. "Now. We just got here. Now." I rarely raised my voice, and the sudden volume startled all of us. The twins froze, eyes wide. "I'm sorry," I said more quietly, looking at the children. "But you all need to go. This is my home, and you weren't invited." Amanda gathered the twins with exaggerated movements, muttering about how Auntie Mel is being very mean today. As they left, she turned back with one parting shot. "Mom and Dad are right. You've always only thought about yourself." That night, my phone exploded with angry messages. My father called, leaving a voicemail that made my stomach clench. "Your behavior today was completely unacceptable. Amanda came to you in good faith, and you threw her and those innocent children out like garbage. This isn't a request anymore, Melanie. Either you help your sister by sharing your house, or you're not part of this family. It's that simple." My mother's text was no less devastating. "I've never been so disappointed in you. After all we've done, After all the support we've given you, this is how you repay us? By turning your back on your sister in her time of need? I didn't raise you to be this selfish. I sat in my studio that night, surrounded by my paintings, women facing crossroads, women making difficult choices, women finding their power. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, at my own crossroads, facing the hardest stand of my life. My phone buzzed with a notification. Amanda had posted on Facebook, heartbroken that some people choose their hobbies over family. Trying to stay strong for my babies, but it's hard when you're abandoned by those who should love you most. Hashtag single mama struggle, hashtag family should better. The post already had dozens of sympathetic comments, including several from my extended family expressing shock at my selfishness. The narrative was being written without me, casting me as the villain in a story where the nuance and truth had been completely erased. I called my best friend Hazel, the only person who truly understood what my art meant to me. She answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting for my call. "They're trying to take my studio," I said without preamble, my voice breaking. "They want Amanda and the twins to move into my house and turn my studio into a playroom." What? That's insane. Hazel's indignation was immediate and validating. "Please tell me you said no." I did, but they're not accepting it. I explained the ultimatum, the emotional manipulation, the social media campaign that was already turning family members against me. "This is emotional blackmail," Hazel said firmly. "You have every right to say no, Mel. Your house, your studio, your decision. Period." But what if they're right? What if I am being selfish? "Stop that right now," Hazel's voice was stern. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish. And from what you've told me, you've offered several reasonable alternatives that they've rejected. This isn't about helping Amanda, it's about controlling you." We talked for over an hour, Hazel helping me process my feelings and strategize my next steps. Should I tell my family about Barcelona now or wait? Would knowing about my plans make them back off, or would it just escalate the conflict? "I think you should wait," Hazel advised. "They're not in a rational place right now. If you tell them about Barcelona, they'll just see it as more evidence that you're abandoning the family. Focus on protecting your boundaries in the immediate term." After we hung up, I sat in my studio until dawn, anxiety mounting as my departure date grew closer. The lease agreement with the Williams couple was signed. My flights were booked. My boss had reluctantly accepted my resignation, effective in 3 weeks. The wheels were in motion for my new life. Yet here was my family, trying to hijack everything at the last moment without any knowledge of what was actually happening in my life. The collision course was set, and I couldn't see any way to avoid the impact. The breaking point came exactly 10 days after the disastrous family dinner. I was in my studio, working on a new painting that captured my emotional turmoil, a woman standing at the edge of a stormy sea, 1 foot in the water, her face turned toward the horizon where sunlight broke through dark clouds. It was Saturday afternoon, and I had been painting since dawn, losing myself in the work as a way to process my anxiety about the family conflict and my upcoming move. The sound of car doors slamming in my driveway pulled me from my creative trance. I peered through the studio window to see my parents' SUV and Amanda's car. My father was opening the trunk of his vehicle, revealing what appeared to be disassembled furniture, a small bookshelf, what looked like parts of a toy chest, and several cardboard boxes. My blood ran cold as I realized what was happening. They weren't coming to continue the discussion. They were coming to move Amanda in, with or without my consent. I rushed out of the studio just as they approached my front door. My father had a key in his hand, a spare I had given my parents years ago for emergencies. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, blocking the path to my door. My father straightened, clearly not expecting to find me in the backyard. "Melanie. Good, you're home. We're helping Amanda get settled." "Get settled?" I repeated incredulously. "In my house? Without my permission?" "We gave you time to come around," my mother said, her tone cold. "You've ignored our calls and messages for days. We decided action was needed." Behind them, Amanda was unbuckling the twins from their car seats. They looked confused and slightly frightened by the tension in the air. "This is breaking and entering," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You can't just move someone into my house without my consent." "Don't be ridiculous," my father scoffed. "It's not breaking and entering when we have a key. And this is what's best for the family." Best for the family? I was nearly shouting now. What about what's best for me? What about my life, my work, my future? "Your paintings can wait," my mother said dismissively. "Amanda and the children need a home now." I watched in disbelief as my father moved past me and inserted the key into my front door. Something inside me snapped. I reached out and snatched the key from his hand. "No. This stops now." My voice was low and steady, surprising even myself with its authority. "This is my house. I pay the mortgage. I make the decisions about who lives here. And I am telling you that Amanda and the twins are not moving in." My father's face flushed with anger. "You ungrateful little." "Robert," my mother warned, glancing at the twins who were now watching wide-eyed from Amanda's car. "I've offered help in other ways," I continued firmly. "I've researched affordable apartments. I've offered financial assistance. I've even offered to help with childcare. But giving up my home and my studio is not an option." "Why not?" Amanda demanded, joining us on the lawn. "Why is your precious art more important than your family? Than your niece and nephew having a stable home?" "It's not about the art," I said, though of course it was partly about that. "It's about autonomy. It's about respect. None of you even asked me before making these plans. You just assumed I would sacrifice everything because that's what I've always done." "We shouldn't have to ask," my father bellowed. "Family helps family. Period. Help goes both ways," I countered. "When have any of you supported my dreams? When have you ever treated my art as anything other than a childish hobby?" "Because that's what it is," my mother exclaimed. "You're 32 years old, Melanie. It's time to grow up and face reality." "This is my reality," I gestured toward my studio. "That space in there, that's not just a hobby. It's my career, my passion, my future." "Some future," Amanda muttered. "Wasting your life on paintings no one will ever see or care about." The casual cruelty of her words struck me like a physical blow. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not just the stress of her current situation, but a lifetime of entitlement and self-centeredness that had been enabled by our parents. "You don't get to dismiss my life's work," I said quietly. "Not anymore. Not ever again." I turned to my parents. "Take your furniture and boxes and go home. Amanda is not moving in here. That's final." My father stepped toward me, his face contorted with rage. "Listen to me, young lady. You either help your sister, or you're no longer a part of this family. Do you understand me? We will cut you off completely." I felt a strange calm descend over me. If your love and acceptance are conditional on me giving up my home, my work, and my dreams, then maybe being cut off isn't such a terrible thing. My mother gasped. "Melanie, how can you say such a thing?" Amanda, seeing her plan unraveling, changed tactics. She called the twins over from the car. "Emma, Jacob, come say hi to Annie Mel. Tell her how excited you are about your new playroom." The children approached cautiously, sensing the tension. Emma clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit, half hiding behind her brother. "We're gonna live with you, Auntie Mel," Jacob said hesitantly. "Mommy says we can play with your paints." "Oh, honey," I crouched down to their level, my heart breaking for these innocent children being used as emotional pawns. "I love you both very much, but you're not going to live here. This is Annie Mel's house." "But Mommy said," Emma began. "Mommy was mistaken," I said gently, ignoring Amanda's outraged gasp. "But I'll still see you and play with you, just not here. That's enough." Amanda grabbed the children's hands, pulling them back toward her car. "We're leaving. Come on, kids." Apparently, Auntie Mel doesn't want to help us after all. "Amanda, don't do this," I pleaded. "Don't use the kids this way. But she was already buckling them into their car seats, making a show of wiping away tears as she whispered loud enough for me to hear, "I know, sweetie. I don't understand why she doesn't love us either." My parents stood on my lawn, looking at me as if I were a stranger. "This isn't over," my father said ominously. "You'll regret this selfishness, Melanie." "The only thing I regret," I replied, "is not standing up for myself sooner." They left in a flurry of slammed car doors and spinning tires, leaving me standing alone in my driveway, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. Inside, my house felt suddenly, blissfully silent. I sank to the floor in my hallway and finally allowed myself to cry, not from guilt or shame, but from the sheer relief of having finally drawn a line that couldn't be crossed. After the confrontation, I called Hazel in tears. She arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and unwavering support. "I'm proud of you," she said, pouring us each a generous glass. "Do you know how long I've been waiting for you to stand up to them like that?" I managed a watery smile. "Only about 15 years. We sat in my living room, the afternoon sun casting long shadows as I recounted the ugly scene in my driveway. Hazel listened, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "So what now?" she asked when I had finished. "They're not going to let this go easily." She was right. My phone had already collected a dozen missed calls and angry texts. My extended family was weighing in too, most of them only hearing Amanda's version of events. "I think I need to accelerate my plans," I said slowly, the idea forming as I spoke. The Williams were planning to move in 3 weeks from now, but maybe they could come earlier. "And Barcelona?" Hazel asked. I took a deep breath. "I'll contact Gabriel tomorrow, see if I can arrive ahead of schedule. The program doesn't officially start for another month, but maybe I could get settled, find my bearings before it begins." That night, after Hazel left, I sent emails to both Gabriel and the Williams. To my relief, both responded positively. Gabriel was enthusiastic about my early arrival, offering to help me find temporary accommodation until the residency housing became available. The Williams, retirees with flexible schedules, were happy to move in 2 weeks earlier than planned. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I gave notice at my apartment, began packing my essential art supplies and personal items, and made arrangements for shipping larger pieces to Barcelona. I sold my car to a colleague at work and canceled various subscriptions and services. Through it all, the pressure from my family continued. My father left threatening voicemails about removing me from their will. My mother sent lengthy texts detailing how I was breaking Amanda's heart and destroying the family. Amanda herself continued her social media campaign, posting photos of the twins looking sad with captions like telling the kids we have to stay in our too expensive house because no one would help us. I blocked them all on social media but couldn't bring myself to block their numbers. Some part of me still hoped for reconciliation, though on different terms than before. 5 days after the confrontation in my driveway, I heard the now familiar sound of my parents' SUV pulling up outside. This time, however, there was also the unmistakable rumble of a large truck. I looked out my window to see a rental moving truck parking behind my parents' vehicle. Amanda was in the passenger seat of the truck, my father at the wheel. My mother's car pulled in shortly after. They were back, and this time they had brought reinforcements. My Uncle David and Cousin Patrick were emerging from their own car, ready to help with what appeared to be a full-scale move. I felt a surge of panic. They were really going to try to force their way in and move Amanda's belongings into my house against my will. This was beyond boundary violations. This was essentially an attempted invasion. I called Hazel in a panic. "They're back with a moving truck and reinforcements. What do I do?" "I'm on my way," she said immediately. "Don't open the door. Don't engage. I'm bringing Mark." Mark was Hazel's boyfriend, a contractor whose imposing physical presence might help deter any aggressive moves from my family. As I waited for Hazel and Mark to arrive, my family began unloading furniture from the truck. A crib, a small dresser, boxes labeled kids' clothes and Amanda's kitchen. They were acting as if their plan was already a done deal. I stepped onto my porch, the lease agreement clutched in my hand like a shield. "Stop," I called out. "You need to leave now." My father looked up from the box he was carrying. "Melanie, enough is enough. This childish tantrum has gone on long enough. We're moving Amanda in today, and that's final." "No, you're not," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I have something to tell all of you, and you need to hear it now." Something in my tone must have caught their attention because they paused in their activities, gathering at the bottom of my porch steps. "I'm leaving the country," I said simply. "In exactly 2 weeks, I'm flying to Barcelona for an artist residency program. My house has already been leased to another family for the duration of my absence." The stunned silence that followed was almost comical. My mother was the first to recover. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "What residency? Since when?" "Since 6 weeks ago," I replied. "I was going to tell you all once the details were finalized, but then this situation with Amanda erupted." "You're making this up," Amanda accused, her eyes narrowing. "You're just saying this to get out of helping me." I held up the lease agreement. "This is a legally binding contract, signed and notarized last week. The Williams family is moving in here on the 15th. I've already given notice at my job and sold my car." My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You're leaving the country without telling us? For some art program? Have you lost your mind?" "No, Dad. I've found it." I felt a strange sense of calm descend over me. For the first time in my life, I'm putting my dreams first. My work has been recognized by an international gallery. I've been invited to a prestigious residency program that could launch my career as a professional artist. This is everything I've worked for. "But what about your sister?" my mother cried. "What about the twins?" "Amanda's situation is difficult, but it's not my responsibility to solve it by giving up my home and my future. I've offered other forms of help, all of which you've rejected." Just then, Hazel's car pulled up, with Mark's truck right behind it. They got out and came to stand beside me on the porch, a visible show of support. "Who are they?" my Uncle David asked suspiciously. "My friends," I replied. "They're here to make sure you all leave without causing any more trouble." Mark, 6'4" and broad-shouldered, crossed his arms and nodded politely but firmly at my family. "This is ridiculous," my father sputtered. "You can't just run away to Europe." "I'm not running away," I corrected him. "I'm running towards something, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pursue my passion professionally. The fact that none of you can see that or be happy for me says everything about our relationship." Amanda burst into tears, but for once, they seemed genuine rather than manipulative. "What am I supposed to do now?" she wailed. "The same thing anyone in your situation would do," I said gently. "Find an affordable place to live, apply for assistance if you need it, lean on friends, pick up extra work if possible. It's hard, but people do it every day." My mother looked at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been a reluctant glimmer of respect. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" "Completely serious," I confirmed. "Now please, take your furniture and go home. The house is not available, not now, not ever." To my surprise, they actually began to retreat. My uncle and cousin awkwardly returned boxes to the truck while my father stood in stunned silence. Amanda climbed back into the truck's passenger seat without another word, her expression unreadable. Before my mother left, she paused at the bottom of my porch steps. "When were you going to tell us about Barcelona?" "At Sunday dinner next week," I admitted. "I wanted to have everything finalized first, to show you this was real and not just a pipe dream." She nodded slowly. "I see." Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Is it a good program? This residency thing?" It was the first time she had ever expressed even a flicker of interest in my artistic pursuits. "One of the best in Europe," I said. 6 months of dedicated studio space, a stipend, and a featured exhibition at the end. She seemed to absorb this information, though I couldn't read her reaction. Well, she finally said, I suppose we'll need to talk about this later. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a retreat from outright hostility. As they all drove away, the moving truck, my parents' SUV, my uncle's car, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. I had done it. I had stood my ground, revealed my plans, and survived the confrontation. Hazel squeezed my hand. How does it feel to finally tell them? I considered the question carefully. Liberating, I said finally. Absolutely liberating. The week following the confrontation passed in tense silence. My family didn't attempt another invasion, but they also didn't reach out except for one brief text from my mother asking if I was really serious about this Barcelona thing. I replied with a simple, yes, absolutely, and attached a link to the residency program's website. She didn't respond. I threw myself into preparations for my departure, sorting through belongings, deciding what to take, what to store, and what to donate. The Williams came by to measure for curtains and discuss minor details about the house. They were a godsend, respectful of my space, and genuinely excited about living there. We'll take good care of your studio, Margaret assured me, her eyes lighting up as she explored the space. I've always wanted a proper place for my photography. 7 days after the moving truck incident, as I was carefully packaging some of my smaller canvases for storage, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father and I have been talking. We may have overreacted. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just to talk. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decipher the intent behind it. Was this a genuine olive branch or another attempt to manipulate me? After careful consideration, I replied, I'm willing to talk, but only if we can have a respectful conversation. No demands, no ultimatums. The house and Barcelona are not up for negotiation. Her response came quickly. Understood. Beanie's Cafe at 10 a.m. I agreed, then called Hazel to strategize. What do you think they want? Hard to say, Hazel mused. Best case scenario, they've realized they were being unreasonable and want to reconcile before you leave. Worst case, they have some new scheme to pressure you. Either way, I'm standing firm, I said, surprised by my own conviction. The next morning, I arrived at Beanie's Cafe 10 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner where we could have some privacy. My mother arrived precisely at 10, alone. My father's absence was both a relief and a concern. Your father wanted to come, she explained, reading my expression as she sat down. But I thought it might be better if we talked woman to woman first. I nodded, waiting as she ordered a latte from the server. When we were alone again, she surprised me by getting straight to the point. I owe you an apology, Melanie, she said, her voice uncharacteristically humble. We were wrong to try to force you to take in Amanda and the children. And we were wrong to dismiss your art the way we did. I blinked, momentarily speechless. In 32 years, I couldn't remember my mother ever admitting she was wrong about anything. What changed? I finally asked. She stirred her coffee slowly before answering. After you told us about Barcelona, I looked up the program online. It's impressive. Very prestigious. And then I looked at your Instagram page. I didn't even know you had one. Your paintings. She paused, seeming to struggle for words. They're really quite remarkable, Melanie. I had no idea you were so talented. The compliment, so unexpected and so long withheld, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, I said simply. Why didn't you ever show us? She asked. I gave her an incredulous look. I tried, Mom. For years. But you and Dad always treated it like a cute hobby, something I'd eventually grow out of. She had the grace to look ashamed. I suppose we did. We were wrong. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding between us. What about Amanda? I finally asked. How is she? My mother sighed. Struggling. But she started looking at apartments closer to her work. There's a housing assistance program she might qualify for. Your father and I have agreed to help with a security deposit. That's good, I said cautiously. I'm glad she's making plans. She sent me an email last night. My mother continued, surprising me again. She admitted she'd been entitled about your house. Said she was embarrassed by her behavior. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. She actually said that? My mother nodded. I think seeing you stand your ground made her realize she needs to stand on her own 2 feet as well. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground we should have covered years ago. I told her about Gabriel, about the gallery interest in my work, about my hopes for the residency. She listened, really listened, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than judgment. As we prepared to leave, she hesitated, then asked, "When do you fly out?" "Next Thursday morning," I said. "Hazel is driving me to the airport." She nodded, then surprised me with a brief, awkward hug. "Would it be all right if we came to say goodbye? Your father and I." I felt a lump in my throat. "I'd like that." The final week flew by in a blur of last-minute preparations. The Williams moved in 2 days before my departure, settling in with remarkably little fuss. I spent my last night in Michigan at Hazel's apartment, my suitcases packed and ready for the morning flight. "I still can't believe this is happening," I told her as we shared a bottle of wine on her balcony. Barcelona. A real art residency. It doesn't seem real. "Believe it," Hazel said firmly. "You've earned this, Mel. With your talent and your hard work." My parents and, surprisingly, Amanda with the twins met us at the airport the next morning. The goodbye was emotional but lacking the drama I had feared. My father awkwardly patted my shoulder and muttered something about being proud of me. My mother handed me a small package. "Just a few things for your trip," she explained. Mints, hand sanitizer, a travel pillow. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched me deeply. Amanda approached last, the twins clinging to her hands. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For everything. I was selfish and entitled, and I'm working on that." "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved by her apology. "That means a lot." Jacob tugged at my sleeve. "Are you really going on an airplane, Auntie Mel?" I crouched down to his level. "I sure am, buddy. All the way across the ocean to Spain. Will you paint pictures there?" Emma asked shyly. "Lots of them, I promised. And I'll send you both special postcards from Barcelona." The final boarding call for my flight prompted a flurry of hugs and goodbyes. As Hazel embraced me one last time, she whispered, "Go change the world with your art." The flight to Barcelona was long but filled with anticipation rather than anxiety. I watched America disappear beneath the clouds, feeling not sadness, but a profound sense of possibility. Gabriel met me at the airport, his warm smile immediately putting me at ease. "Welcome to Barcelona, Melanie," he said, taking one of my bags. "Your adventure begins now." The city was everything I had dreamed of and more, vibrant, colorful, steeped in artistic tradition, yet buzzing with contemporary energy. The artist community welcomed me with open arms, curious about my work and my perspective as an American. My temporary apartment was small but charming, with a tiny balcony overlooking a bustling street. The residency provided a spacious studio with perfect natural light, where I immediately set up my easel and began to work. 2 weeks after my arrival, I received an unexpected email from Amanda. Attached was a photo of her and the twins standing in front of a modest but bright apartment. "Our new home," the caption read. "I signed the lease yesterday. It's small, but it's ours, and we're making it work." I replied with genuine congratulations and a photo of my studio in Barcelona. Her response came quickly, "It's perfect for you, Mel. I get it now, why you couldn't give this up." Over the following weeks, a tentative reconciliation began to take shape across the ocean. My parents called weekly, asking about my work and the residency with what seemed like genuine interest. My mother even started following my professional Instagram account, leaving encouraging comments on the works in progress I posted. During one video call, I gave them a virtual tour of my studio, showing the large canvas I was working on for the residency exhibition. "It's extraordinary," Melanie, my father said, surprising me with his enthusiasm. I never really looked at your work before, not properly. I'm sorry for that. Better late than never, Dad, I replied and meant it. 3 months into my residency, I was painting in my studio when Gabriel stopped by with exciting news. A prominent collector had seen my work online and wanted to visit the studio. This could be big, Melanie, he said, his eyes bright with excitement. Very big. As I stood in my sun-filled Spanish studio that afternoon, preparing for a visit that could launch my career to new heights, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The years of struggle, the dismissal of my passion, the painful confrontation with my family, and finally, the courage to stand my ground and follow my dreams. The woman in my current painting stared back at me from the canvas, strong, determined, her face turned toward a future bright with possibility. I recognized myself in her eyes, in the set of her jaw, in the confident tilt of her chin. I was no longer just painting women in transformation. I had become one. Life teaches us that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for growth and self-respect. That family love should be supportive, not suffocating. That dreams deferred too long may never be realized. Most importantly, it teaches us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and chart a new course. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your own dreams? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Remember, it's your life to live. Make it a masterpiece. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and until next time, keep creating your own path.